And we're on. This is 3 yards per carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. And we have a full show today. We're going to talk about Jon-Eric Sullivan, the new general manager of your Miami Dolphins. But first, if you want to interact with us, and it seems like a lot of you do, because we're getting an influx of new members, you got to go to Discord and go to discord.gg/OnlyFans. That is our Discord. Join on a desktop. It is no other price than $2.99 read-only, $4.99 all access. And if you didn't think that there was enough reasons to join our Discord OnlyFans, if you're on X today, all kinds of ticket scams and parking scams are taking place there today for the national championship. That's an added bonus. If you join, guess what? Just send me a DM and I'll point you in the right direction for tickets and parking and hotel and all that stuff. Okay, so talk about a bonus, Simon. You join, and you could just ask me for advice for going to this national championship game on Monday.
There you go. Win-win.
I'm surprised we don't have like an active like ticket, situation like, where people are selling tickets and stuff like that.
I've tried to get us that sponsor for whatever reason. I don't know. It just hasn't worked out. By the way, we got 3 sponsors for today, and I'll get to those in the middle of the show. I'll start with you, Simon. It's from your neck of the woods, kind of. Green Bay. Jon-Eric Sullivan, he's the new general manager of your Miami Dolphins. Initial thoughts on the process, and then we're going to talk about the man and his philosophy, but the process of where we got here, because I'm kind of over the moon on this one. Like, I'm kind of in on it. I had my suspicions. I don't know if it was my PTSD from previous iterations of looking for a general manager, but I kind of dig how they came about doing this thing. Your thought on the process, Simon?
Yeah, I think your PTSD would have been fully justified if Troy Aikman hadn't been part of the situation, and I'm really, really glad. I think it's the most sensible thing that Stephen Ross has done in many a year, actually, to bring Aikman in. We talked about. I mean, look, go back a year, 18 months even in Discord, people were asking us about who would have as GMs. Jon-Eric Sullivan was on all of our lists. A guy that's been ready for a couple of years, I think, and kind of resisted the temptation to jump in part because of the situation that, you're a perennial playoff and sort of NFC Championship-ish game type team in Green Bay. But I can't argue with the process. I think they got exactly the right hire. I thought they had interesting interviewees with guys. I think they catered for all tastes in terms of, if we keep McDaniel, there's a couple of guys here. If we don't, there's a couple of guys here. We've got some flexibility of working with different coaches. It was interesting. Champ Kelly was in the mix, and although nothing's come out, he seemed to indicate on that sort of passionate Instagram post that his family wouldn't have to move. So does that mean there's a front office gig for him? Perhaps. I know he was certainly well liked within the building. The players seemed to jive with him as well. So, but yeah, I think it's an absolute home run. Pluck from the best. And the Packers have historically over the last 20 years, during the time that Sullivan has been at Green Bay, have been one of the best teams. They've drafted, Hall of Fame type players. Well, Hall of Fame players, and Aaron Rodgers. They've drafted outstanding players. They've drafted all pros. They've built in the right way, whether that's on the interior defensive line, whether that's the edge position, or whether that's critically the offensive line. You go through that list of players that Sullivan's been a part of drafting, whether that's Darren College or Alan Barbara or Sitton or TJ Lang or Marshall Newhouse or Brian Bulaga or Jordan Morgan or Zach Tom or Josh Myers. I mean, there's a whole great list of JC Tretter, Corey Linsley. I mean, there's 8 all-pro offensive linemen they've drafted during his tenure, David Bakhtiari, and only 2 first-round picks out of all these players. Mm-hmm. I'm just reading off Elton Jenkins, only 2 first-round players. And that's really been the issue. And I think one of the things for Green Bay is that, we were just talking about this just before we started recording, and how, unlucky is probably not the right word, but when you're up by double digits, in the final knockings of a game and you end up losing, it's a testament to the depth that they had, given the players that were out. Especially on that defense. You look at Devontae Wyatt being out. You look at Lucas Van Ness, the first round pick from a couple of years ago, being on a pitch count. Micah Parsons obviously being out. Adrian Cooper was out of the game.
Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Crow, yeah, but I'm just thinking just on that defense, for example. I think it's testament to the depth, and I think it's just the one thing the Dolphins have historically been really poor on. You go back to the 23 and 22 drafts. There's only Devon Achane, the one player that Mike McDaniel kind of banged the table for, is the only player still on the roster from that. And I think you look at Green Bay's drafts through that time, and some of those players aren't stars, but there's certainly just depth that you can go to in terms of just having people that can step into the void when a star goes down and perform to a level that helps you, get into the playoffs and frankly, a playoff game they should have won. So to me, I thought the process was excellent. I love the fact that Aikman was involved. I love the fact that he's still involved coaching Chris. And to me, Jon-Eric Sullivan is the absolute perfect man for the job to try and turn this hulk of a ship around.
TLDR, go back and what did you say? 8 All-Pro linemen?
Yeah.
without hardly drafting any in the first round. Yeah, that'll satisfy the fans. So, but then the second thing is what was revealed about him with Jordan Love and how he was the he was the first basically on Jordan Love there and really pounded the table for him. And they had a tricky situation with Aaron Rodgers, obviously. So, so if you're talking about foresight and that classic Green Bay foresight, really, where they drafted Aaron Rodgers originally with Brett Favre still there, and then they drafted Jordan Love with Aaron Rodgers still there, and the reason that they have had this smooth transition is because of their ability to pick quarterbacks and show that sort of foresight. To where they don't just have to go shopping for whatever quarterback is available, that's how almost every other team does it. That's very attractive. It was a strange process to me, in that it was highly foreshadowed. Which is to say that right away, all the initial reports, every single media member reported they're looking for a strong scouting background, scout. And then the interview slate comes out and a lot of these guys aren't really scouts, and so it was a little bit strange. But then when they got to the final, I think it was a final pair really, between Jon-Eric Sullivan and Chad Alexander, they were scouts. So it was sort of like, we said something at the beginning, we were kind of like a little questionable in the middle, and then we got to exactly where we said in the end. And the only question that I would have about this about the process is the sort of, we talked about needing to do a clean sweep and start over, which I'm sure that will happen in the front office. But the clean sweep in this case will still involve, Brandon Shore, who is, an institutionalized member of that front office who is, essentially grown up there. And he will be empowered, and he's going to have the purse strings. He's going to be able to set the budgets. He's going to be able to set the resource allocation strategy for the team. It sounds like he, will be the guy that's answerable to Steve Ross himself and almost co-equal to the general manager in ways. And that's a big, powerful position. It's kind of the background of the guy that I would have rather hired at GM, is somebody who has that background and that ability to make executive decisions. And we've talked about that plenty before. They're going with this structure, and I hope it works. It's worked in other places around the league. It really has. So, all good things, all good hopes there. I do think that as far as what they set out to do to get a scout, they got the guy. They got the one. That was the one that you would have settled on. I almost would have had a little bit of an icky feeling if they settled on Chad Alexander because of his proximity to John Harbaugh in an attempt to just to lure Harbaugh in. But instead they went with the guy that we had been told, long before they settled on him would be their top guy. The guy that Troy Aikman respected, and you talked about him being part of that process. So, you get a scout, you pair him with Brandon Shore who's in an empowered position. Hopefully Brandon Shore's got a nice portfolio of things that he can show, disagreements that he had and so on and so forth with decisions that they made. They empowered him for a reason, which suggests that he was not empowered before and, could not make these decisions himself before. So hopefully there's a good record there. And hopefully they, really know how to strategically, in a forward-thinking manner, manipulate the salary cap and utilize debt, because that's what the game is about now. So, I think there's all kinds of reasons. Everybody that I've talked to has been very bullish on this for once. I mean, it's almost odd. It's almost odd talking to Dolphins fans around, and everybody's like, oh yeah, we did it right for once, and that's a good sign. That's a great sign for the owner, because, everybody's not kind of like, I don't know about that. No, everybody's like, hey, we did it right for once. And I think then you nailed it.
Yeah. Now, as far as the philosophy, and I'll start with you, Simon, I want to give a lot of credit to Travis Wingfield. He did some of the legwork on this. I did some of the rest. And it's kind of clear he likes, or I'll say, it's not fair to say, okay, every good decision that the Packers have ever made belongs to Jon-Eric Sullivan. Let's just say that he had a hand. All right. The Packers have liked 4-year seniors, guys with minuscule to non-existent injury histories, which, my God, when they spent 2 drafts taking guys that had at least 2 complete seasons in college. So that tells me that they're actually looking at stuff like that. What a breath of fresh air. And of course, all the video and audio you hear on Jon-Eric Sullivan, he's a football purist. He's gonna look at that offensive line. He's gonna say, we got a hole here, got a hole there. We're going to fill it. So your thoughts on his philosophy, because I'm kind of in on pretty much everything that the Packers have done. The only thing that the Packers haven't done is actually won the ultimate prize. But there's reasons for that as well. And we're going to get into some of that in the second half of the show.
I mean,
but your thoughts, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, Sullivan's won a Super Bowl, obviously. I mean, he won a Super Bowl with the Packers. So, but I think that, the injury thing is really important. And I think it would potentially rule out some players that I think we're getting talked about in the first round. We keep getting mocked a couple of players who I just think I just don't see any reason or any way that we would go near them. And 2 of those immediately would be Jamod McCoy, who's a Tennessee cornerback who had great tape in 2024, but hasn't played a single snap. He tore his ACL in January, hasn't played last January, didn't play a single snap last season. I just don't see any way that the Dolphins would draft him in the first round. And the second is, and I really like him, but Jordan Tyson, the wide receiver from Arizona State, who back-to-back years has had significant injuries. This year, significant hamstring tear. Last year, a broken collarbone. The year before, torn ACL, MCL, and PCL. And I just don't necessarily see those being players. And I've just seen a mock draft literally as we start, just as I was waiting to log into the chat. I was looking at a mock draft from one of the might have been A to Z or one of the Draft Network, one of those guys, and had mocked us to Jordan Tyson. I just don't see that being a thing. And at positions, I think they generally have size, weight, height thresholds. The Packers famously don't draft wide receivers in the first round. I mean, I know they drafted Matthew Golden this year, but beyond that, they very much look at offensive line, edge rushers. They're not scared to take linebackers. They're not scared to take defensive backs. Obviously, they've taken corners. You look at Jair Alexander and Kevin King, Demarius Randall as a safety kind of corner hybrid, Clinton Dix. They're happy taking defensive backs in the first round. And they're certainly happy taking offensive linemen, Brian Balaga and guys like that. And they're very happy taking, interior and edge guys, whether that's BJ Raji, whether that's Nick Perry, whether that's Dayton Jones, whether that's Devontae Wyatt, that's Kenny Clark, players like that they've taken historically, Rashan Gary, all in the first round that they've taken, Lucas Van Ness in 23, and they're very, very happy to do that. So I think it's building those positions that Miami historically haven't drafted well at, generally, and we have holes to fill pretty much everywhere. But I would strongly think that, that there's going to be some key positions that Sullivan will target. And I don't think he'll move off what has been a historical draft track for him and that's partly due to the history of the Packers, whether that's Ron Wolf, whether that's Ted Thompson, whether that's Brian Gutekunst. And obviously he didn't work under Wolf, but his influence was very much still there when Sullivan was coming through the ranks. Obviously was hired by Ted Thompson, and then has worked for the last 7 or 8 years under Gutekunst, and that philosophy has remained the same, Chris.
Yeah, I think that one thing that goes probably undersold about him a little bit, and even for myself, there were kind of 2 molds that I was looking at for a general manager. There's one, if you're kind of an executive kind of guy, which we've talked about before, but there's also, if you're a scout, but also you bleed into the coaching area, then that's really attractive to me. The point is, you want a guy that kind of can multitask in 2 different areas, or speak intelligently to 2 different things, not just, the being on the scouting trail. And this was a guy who, son of longtime legendary wide receivers coach Jerry Sullivan, who could have gone into coaching himself, and has talked about it. Like, he's talked about that the only reason he's not in coaching is because it's not his strong suit to have the patience to teach. He'd rather just evaluate. But this is clearly a guy that had a reputation for being able to marry the scouting process to the particular coaching and the coaching needs and the scheme. And that was one of the first things that Albert Breer talked about when he did the rundown of all the next best GM interviews. And so I think that's a really attractive thing for Miami, because that's where Miami, I think that scouting purview, or that coaching purview in the scouting department, has been missing. And perhaps that's why they have such a history of drafting healthy players, because there's that coaching perspective that says availability is the best ability. And I think that was clearly missing for the Dolphins over the years. We saw it, so I'm really excited about the emphasis on health. I'm really excited about the fact that he can, really marry the scouting process into the coaching process, and and speak authoritatively that way. And then add on to it, obviously, the offensive line background and the quarterback background, and I think that's a sale. That's a sale for you.
Yeah, one thing I did like about that I've liked about Green Bay's drafts is something that I did like about one previous Miami Dolphins draft, and that was when they took Mike Gesicki and then they took Durham Smythe. They identified, look, we have a gaping hole at tight end. We're going to double up with archetypes for what we want. Packers did that in 23. I wasn't a huge Luke Musgrave fan. In fact, I'm still not. But they doubled back and took Tucker Kraft in the 3rd round after they took Luke Musgrave in the 2nd round. Tucker Kraft is probably a top 5 tight end in the NFL. So they got paid handsomely for that philosophy. We're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the playoff games that we witnessed this weekend and how it kind of ties to some of the head coaching candidates. But first, let me tell you about Factor. They are with us not only for January, not for the run for the playoffs to the Super Bowl. They're with us for the 2026 calendar year. So we like to thank them. So it's a new year, big goals, no time to cook. Factor makes it easy with fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs, so you can eat well without the shopping or cooking. Quality functional ingredients, including lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, no refined seed oils. Meals that fit your goals and schedule. Healthier eating, calorie management, and more. I am a customer. Okay, and I have been a customer for a couple of years now. So, you're talking about, you could go on their website, you register with them, you go on the website, you could pick from over 100 rotating weekly meals. First of all, they all taste great. So head on over to factormeals.com/3yards50off. It's the same promo code. It's been the same promo code for a couple of years now. And use the promo code 3yards, the number 3, yards 50 off to get 50% off your first Factor Plus. And you get for your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's changed, by the way. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with the code and qualifying auto-renewing sub purchases. Make healthier eating easier with Factor. And we'd also like to welcome to you a new sponsor to the show, Upside. Financial resolutions are great, but let's be real. Budgets don't reset on January 1st. Between post-holiday credit card bills and getting back to your regular routine, cash is tight. That's why there's Upside. The free Upside app, and I have it, by the way, I have it right now on my phone, gets you cash back on gas, groceries, and dining. The three things draining your wallet right now. And trust me, they drained my wallet pretty well this past weekend. But I'll tell you what happened with one of them in particular. Over 100,000 participating locations means cashback opportunities are everywhere you're ready to go. And yes, it's cash back, not points that you'll never use. You know those apps that you get. Oh, if you get to 15,000 points, you might get a free Coke. No, it doesn't work that way. Not credits that expire. You get actual money that you transfer straight back into your bank account. Here's how it works. You open the app, claim an offer, pay with your card like normal anywhere you're paying for gas, dining, groceries, and you get paid. That's it. Simple as that. You'll earn 3 times more cash back with Upside than any loyalty program or credit card rewards anywhere else. Upside. And by the way, and when I said that, I'll tell you something that happened to me. I put it to use already. I paid for $31 in gas. Sure enough, $3.75 showed up in my Upside account. And I sent that right back. So when you're putting gas, think about it. If you're getting 20 cents off a gallon, you're kind of ahead of the game on everybody else, aren't you? So Upside has given back $1 billion to its free users. To find out how much you can earn, download the free Upside app today and use the promo code 3YARDS. That's the number 3YARDS to get an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas. That's an extra 25 cents back for every gallon on your first tank of gas using the promo code 3YARDS. Upside. And of course, Underdog. Speaking of sponsors that are with us for the 2026 calendar year, we'd like to welcome back Underdog Fantasy again. Football playoffs are here, and Underdog is the best place to get in on all the gridiron action. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. Get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. Last night, I did not partake. Everybody was asking, are you gonna bombard that Justin Herbert interception number? And I'm like, no. I don't trust it. He was awful, but he didn't throw an interception last night. So no, I was not in on that one. So what are you waiting for? Download the app today and use the promo code 3YARDS. That's the number 3YARDS to score $75 in bonus entries when you play your first $5. That's promo code 3YARDS. Underdog. Make picks, win money.
18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
And we are back. And for those wondering, like, my God, this guy's just been talking for like 10 minutes. If it were up to me, I'd be doing ads for like 60 minutes, and then I'd say hello, goodbye, and see you next week. But yeah, call it a podcast right there. So let's take it backwards. Let's talk about last night's game. I think Chris didn't see too much of it, so I'll start with Simon a little bit here. Jesse Minter should be a head coaching candidate. I understand everybody's like, oh my God, we're doing this again. The hot guy. Look, his defense is really good. Drake May is really good. That offense may not have a bunch of superstars on it, but they function. Number 2 scoring offense in the NFL. If it wasn't because their quarterback just short-circuited last night, I think the Chargers are probably moving on because Minter kept that offense in check all night. I kind of like Jesse Minter. I don't think he's in my top 3. But what did you make of that game last night? And obviously the guy that's going to come out of that game as a top candidate, Simon, Jesse Minter.
To be honest, I thought the Patriots were dominant pretty much. I didn't see. I mean, I saw a little bit of the All-22 today, and there's a whole Justin Herbert conversation to be had. I just thought that the dominant quarterback won, and that was May. His poise in the pocket is extraordinary for a second-year player. His ability just to hold and not be fearful of contact, or he just holds the defense for a split second and longer than most quarterbacks do, because he's so comfortable in the pocket there. He's so big, and what Josh McDaniels has done a great job of, and they do it on almost every play, is that there's a safety valve underneath on almost every passing play. You've literally got usually Travion Henderson or Stevenson, maybe one of the tight ends. They're always leaking out underneath, so he's always got an option to throw to. But what that then does is, once he's thrown to it 2 or 3 times, a safety just sneaks forwards, or a linebacker sneaks forwards, and they can work guys in behind, which they do so brilliantly. And he's so deadly accurate. I mean, the throw over the fingertips of Derwin James for the touchdown is absolutely kind of millimeter perfect.
And how decisive he is as a runner is just
he's fast impressive as well. He's fast as well. And look, in a way, I did feel sorry for Justin Herbert, because he was getting beaten up, he was getting hit an awful lot, and I thought that the Patriots did an outstanding job in terms of just how they played that, and timing of blitzes and sim pressures and backing out and then coming, but he was getting hit an awful lot. And with Joel out, with Rashawn Slater out, that is a hard situation. He almost got trigger unhappy. He almost just didn't know when to pull and when to stick and when to twist. Didn't help they got absolutely no help whatsoever in the run game either. Vidal couldn't get going. Amari and Hampton couldn't get going. They didn't really throw to the tight end. I thought they'd involved Gadsden a lot more, but they really didn't. And you were just looking for someone to step up. And Keenan Allen's great, but he's great on those kind of. He's not the guy that you're looking for when you're down 16-3 and you're trying to pick up explosives down the field. McConkey kind of flattered to deceive a little bit, and Quentin Johnson, after a hot start to this season, sort of tailed off. But yeah, look, the Chargers defense played well, but and they get pressure. Tui Pelutu is a really good player, and obviously Dayan Henley and Derwin James, who we just talked about, are excellent. But yeah, I thought the Patriots were pretty much in control of that game for a long period, and annoyingly, Drake May is really, really good.
Yeah, I the only thing I'll say for Jesse Minter is that they got off the field 4 times and kept the score 6-3 for 4 possessions to hand it back to your quarterback. Like, you got to expect more. You get 4 possessions, 6-3. Like, come on, man. Every time you keep coming back onto the field, the score's still the same. It's 6-3. It's a field goal. Get us something. Your thoughts, Chris?
Yeah, I think that the point is fairly well made, that despite Drake May performing pretty well, the total Patriots offense, 16 points isn't going to get it done most of the time, and I think we know that. So I think the Chargers really kind of botched it, and the Patriots defense played phenomenally well. So give the Patriots defense a lot of credit there for what they did, and obviously there were protection issues with Justin Herbert. At this point, it almost feels like punching down on Justin Herbert to talk about the end of seasons and the fact. I mean, let's be honest. Most coaches would love to coach Justin Herbert as a quarterback. They would. That's reality. But to this point, 6 seasons in, and he's been in the playoffs 3 times. He's lost all 3 playoff games right away. His quarterback rating in the playoffs is something like a 65. He's, taken a bunch of sacks. He's, only
a number of touchdown passes as Juwan Jennings in the playoffs.
Yeah, he has 2 touchdown passes in the playoffs, and Juwan Jennings now has 2 touchdown passes in the playoffs. Herbert has 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, I think, something like that, and 55% completion. I mean, it's bad. But take heart a little bit, and already, coming out of this one, people are talking about, is he going to retire early like Andrew Luck? He's just beaten up too much, he's going to go to medical school. Something like that, and so feel bad for the guy, but the reality is, I think most coaches would love to coach him and flex, kind of try their own hand at making that work. but he is kind of turning into a little bit of a coach killer. Now, the one solace for Chargers fans here is you go back in history, Peyton Manning and Drew Brees didn't win their first playoff games until they were like 6 seasons into their career too. A lot of people don't know that, and so I think that there's hope for him if he keeps playing, if he sticks it out. I don't really know how serious it is about early retirement, but
got to get rid of Greg Roman though, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, clearly they're kind of, they've been accused by some people of playing dinosaur ball and stuff like that. I get it. But you feel bad for him. But on the other hand, give it up to the Patriots defense. Milton Williams was, just superb there. And the pressure that they were getting constantly was phenomenal. And yes, Herbert couldn't pull the trigger on a lot of things, but the Patriots played like a team that advances in the playoffs, and that's exactly.
And by the way, my favorite thing from that game last night is that they put up the PFF rankings for every player. First of all, it's the thing that I hate the most about football media. Okay, is that the Sunday Night Football people put the PFF ranking for every player. The thing I love the most is that they put the PFF ranking for Christian Gonzalez, and it said he's the 47th ranked cornerback in the NFL. So sure, he's the 47th ranked cornerback. Yeah, we got you, Chris.
Sure. No, but I mean, the shame of it is that that's the game. We're talking about for obvious reasons with Drake May and the Patriots and the and even some interest with Justin Herbert and all of the games this weekend. Leading up to tonight, leading up to that, were phenomenal games. The best slate of playoff games stretch of playoff games I have ever seen. Backward going through Saturday, both games there, then the early games on Sunday as well. Like these were just all just supreme playoff games. The NFL's got to be giddy about it because of the ratings and kind of the what it does for creating interest in NFL playoff football. But all of these games were just total barn burners.
All right, working backwards, San Francisco. I don't know who's left there. If you look at that roster, if you look at the depth chart, my favorite depth chart to look up is shout out to Our Lads, because they put little injury designations to everybody. And it looks like your screen it looks like your computer screen is bleeding when you put on the Our Lads 49ers depth chart, because they have injuries pretty much at every single position. And they've had injuries at every single position this season, except running back, oddly enough.
Great coaching job by a guy who I think is the absolute dark horse in our head coaching search in Robert Saleh.
Yeah, and that's where we're headed toward. First of all, a little bit on the game. Chris, Nick Sirianni running 45 yards to motherfuck AJ Brown. What in the fuck was that about? Your thoughts?
Such a big own goal with the Philadelphia Eagles in that game, because the 49ers should have been beatable, I think. And you're right, like to go up there and do that with AJ Brown in the middle of the game. Nobody on the desk at halftime could stomach what he did there. And sure enough, AJ Brown had another kind of key drop afterwards, and which, yes, put the blame on that for AJ Brown, but you're not helping yourself, Nick Sirianni. You really aren't. And so it's just, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have a lot to think about, but also with that salary cap structure that they're running, the number one pretty much number one in debt of any team, and with a 2029, I think it is, where it's questionable whether they can literally even field a football team, based on the amount of debt that they will have come due in that year. And I'm being 100% serious here. That's not an exaggeration. That you wonder at this, is this the end? Have we seen the end of the Philadelphia Eagles? Like they are on, and I know that I'm sure there's some relevant old ancient Chinese proverbs here, but Howie Roseman can easily go from a hero amongst GMs to the absolute, not, I don't want to say laughing stock, but people are not going to envy the Philadelphia Eagles in their salary cap position, but give it up for the San Francisco 49ers. The one thing that we need to talk about these coaches and that we're going to interview for the Dolphins, but Robert Saleh, the thing that he has going for him is that he's sort of gone both ways, where he went from a good team that has a good history and good structure, and he tried to bring it to a shitty team and with a blank slate and try to establish it himself, which is the path that, let's be honest, the overwhelming majority of all NFL head coaches in history and present, that is the path that they have taken. They were part of good organizations. They get hired somewhere else and they fail, and that's, and so he's gone that. He has fallen through those, fallen into those traps and knows those obstacles. But then he went immediately back to the Green Bay Packers, who we were just talking about as a class organization that year. And then the following year to the San Francisco 49ers, and is part of a very improbable playoff run and one of the best coaching jobs of the entire season with Kyle Shanahan. So, talk about being able to compare, contrast columns A and B, right? Like he gets to see in 2024 what was wrong and what he couldn't accomplish with the Jets, and then go back in 2025 and go back to the class organization, back to the successful team, and say, there it is again. There's, this is what we weren't able to do. And if I had it to do all over again, he's probably in the best position to know what he didn't know back then. Aside from John Harbaugh, of course, or even perhaps Kevin Stefanski, I think that Robert Saleh, you could even argue is in a better position than Stefanski that way, because he's gone back and forth with those. That's what makes him attractive, is not just a culture leader and a tough guy, defensive guy, and a strong defensive mind, a very strong defensive mind, which he showed last night, but that he has that experience that, there's a lot of these guys out there, they don't know what they don't know. And he's had an opportunity to learn that.
Yeah. Kyle Shanahan slays the Vic Fangio dragon. I don't know if you have anything else on this game, Simon, or we move on.
No, move on.
Josh Allen, Jaguars. This was a good game. For whatever reason, Liam Cohen comes out at halftime and they ask him, what do you got to do? And he says, we got to get back to basics. We got to run the football. We got to get back to getting on 3rd and 2. They commenced to not run the football. and just have Trevor Lawrence just throw it all over the lot. At one point, I believed him. But this is the naivete of me. I see the successful coach that wins 13 games, and he says, we got to get back to running the football. And I believe him, right? Sure enough, at one point in this game, they had every running back on the roster averaging over 10 yards a carry. And they had over 120 yards rushing. 10 yards a carry. And they just said, you know what? Trevor Lawrence here throwing 6 consecutive passes on one drive might be a good idea. I'll start with you, Simon, since you didn't have anything for the last one. That game, my God, good game. Bills resurrect themselves, and they're moving on against the Jaguars.
Yeah, I've got a friend who said about 6 weeks ago that the Bills were absolutely done. His name's Alf.
Yeah.
Maybe. Look.
To be fair, since then, they got dethroned from the AFC East, and they almost lost to the Jaguars in the first round. So
yeah, but they didn't, though. And if my aunt had balls, she'd be my uncle. So again, I was having this conversation with a mate yesterday, an English friend, and we were talking about the fact that you could make a legitimate case for pretty much every team that's left in the playoffs. And I said, I couldn't pick a winner. And, Seattle, I can sit here for 5 minutes, tell you why they win the Super Bowl, or the Rams, or the Bears, or the Texans, or whatever. And I think it comes down to the quarterbacks. And the best quarterbacks left in the playoffs are Matthew Stafford and Josh Allen. And Allen showed yesterday, the strength.
And Caleb Williams for one quarter, the fourth.
Yeah, I mean, he made the throw of the season on that 4th and 8 play to Rome Odunze. But look, you go back and look at the way that Allen was beaten up in the first half, the concussion tech, the knee that gets twisted, all the hits that he took, the big throw down the field when they needed it to Brandon Cooks, standing in tall, getting absolutely rocked.
By the way, hate to interrupt you. When Gabe Davis got injured and Brandon Cooks got inserted into the starting lineup, I'm like, that's a mistake for the Jaguars.
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely tread on the Cooks tires, as was proven a couple of times when he got open. And it showed that the Bills were capable of moving the ball down the field by really spreading the ball out and using 6 or 7 different receivers when James Cook was getting throttled up. And that Anthony Campanilo's defense is outstanding. But again, and it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it's true. Allen puts on the Superman cape and the Bills get home. I think Trevor Lawrence has had an excellent season. I think the marriage of him and Liam Cohen is excellent. I do sometimes wonder why he threw the ball into the middle of the field and risked what he did on that. Look, I know that Jacoby Myers got both hands on the ball. It was tight coverage, but when you get both hands on the ball, you kind of want him to bring it down. But that's such a risk, especially when Cole Bishop, who's such a ball hawk, is playing robber there. Cole Bishop's had an outstanding season. Some of the missed tackles are a bit wild, and it gets a bit crazy when it comes to the tackling part of his game. But the reading of especially in the passing game, his reading of what's going on is just outstanding. And he was just sat there as a robber and was doing it over and over again. And the ball bounced up in the air, and he knew he was going to come down with it. And I just questioned that decision. But Buffalo march on, and I can make a case for the Bills going to the Super Bowl. Yeah,
they're going to have to do it on the road, but they got the right quarterback for sure.
That's what it comes down to.
Packers Bears. Somebody said it best on Twitter, and I'll start with you, Chris. Caleb Williams is a bottom 5 quarterback in the NFL in the first 3 quarters, but a top 5 quarterback in the NFL in the 4th quarter. And my God, if you look at his splits, he does look like, and sometimes in the same game, he'll look like absolute garbage, like he did in this game. He had bad body language. He's screaming at his teammates on the sideline. It looks like they're just going to get smoked in their own building in front of a raucous crowd. And then that 4th quarter starts, and all hell breaks loose. And he's the one who's breaking it loose. Your thoughts on that game?
How many times did we say that it was that they've been down 10 points or more with
7
5 minutes to go?
7.
Are they 3-3 where every other team in the NFL is like 2 and 138?
It was something. It was something like every other team is 3 and 50 something, and he's 3 and 3. In that situation, which is just absurd. I think that this was a lot about Green Bay and the mistakes that they made, and the sort of conservatism and misexecutions and things that happen to that team. And that's we're talking about Matt LaFleur some because if he doesn't get that extension, then he's a serious possibility for Miami. But at the same time, I think that there was a lot about that game that wasn't a good look for Matt LaFleur or his coached team. So oddly, I would say that it made him more signable for Ed Policy and the Packers organization, because I think that LaFleur's agent probably came in there if they'd won and they'd kept advancing through the playoffs. I think that his agent would have came in locked and loaded, asking for an absolutely elite contract for Matt LaFleur, and I don't think that he can do that. I don't think that he has the footing to do that anymore. So oddly, that whole, people were kind of looking at that contract negotiation nervously. I got the sense for, but I wouldn't be as nervous anymore. And the thing that came out today that I think is an actual movement of the needle is that they have decided to sign him back. Because they could have decided not to. They could have decided that he has 1 year left. We're going to fire him. We're going to go after John Harbaugh, and John Harbaugh he has a home in the Upper Peninsula, and, he's a Midwest guy, and there are connections there. I think the report that came out today from Adam Schefter is essentially the Packers saying, no, we're not doing that. We are going to try and get this contract negotiation done. It doesn't mean it's done, but I also think, ironically, the loss made it easier.
Yeah, this is a lot of people say it all the time. Stick with the run. Don't abandon the run. This is what it looks like when you don't abandon the run and you can't run. Green Bay was not able to run the football at all. They still tried to stay on schedule. And that made me even more impressed with Jordan Love in this game because he was just essentially just carrying the team to try to hold on. Gave them the lead late. Matthew Golden made an appearance. After everybody I've been saying, man, this kid's a bust. Like, he should be good, and he's just not contributing. All of a sudden, he shows up, and he's making play after play after
Didn't
play.
look like a bust in that game.
No, he did not.
I would have. If you didn't know what he was performing all season long, you'd have gone back and like expected that he had an 800, 900, yard season, something like that. He was good.
So, yeah, your thoughts, Simon, on this game and LaFleur, of course.
Yeah, it was a shocker, really. I was stunned, really, at the end of what I'd just seen, given that, the Packers played so well in the first half and were absolutely dominant. I think what Ben Johnson has done so brilliantly all season is those second half adjustments, and he did it again on Saturday night. And whatever you think about Ben Johnson or whatever you think about the rivalry, he has reignited the fire in that rivalry.
Yeah, speaking of rivalry, he went on the podium today and he said, and they asked him if he wanted to walk back his "fuck the Packers" comment, and he said, "No, I hate that team. Fuck the Packers."
Exactly. I mean, which is great. And we talked about on Discord, if you're a Packers fan or generally any other fan, you think he's an arsehole. If you're a Bears fan, you absolutely love him and you literally run through a wall for him. So I think that's really important. I think that's really important moving forwards. Look, I just thought the conservatism of Matt LaFleur, and this is something that has drip-fed through a lot of his play calling. I watch pretty much every Green Bay game every week, and it is a constant of his play calling. He gets ultra conservative, and they really did, and they found themselves in second and longs and third and longs because the running game wasn't working. And whilst I admire the ability to try and stick to it, what they didn't do, everything was out of the shotgun or the pistol. There was no kind of Love taking snaps under center and trying to establish the run game like that, which then could have set up some play action shots down the field, especially when you got somebody as fast as Christian Watson. And that just didn't happen. And I think 3 of the first 4 drives, they found themselves in either 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, or penalized and were 2nd and 15. And that's just, on the road, in the playoffs, in the cold, and the team started to begin to figure you out, and the momentum's building a bit with the Bears, and the crowd are getting back into it. That was a real struggle for Green Bay. And they came alight in the fourth quarter. The drop by Jaden Reed was just enormous. And Love threw an absolute seed. But look, the game came down to a missed extra point and a missed field goal. If McManus makes the extra point, then Green Bay only need a field goal coming down on the final drive. They had the 5-yard penalty that pushes them further back, so that he the 39-yarder goes to a 44-yarder, and he misses that. And that's really what it came down to. And I think Green Bay would have won the game if they hadn't made those mistakes. So,
but they would have just barely hung on. And
absolutely,
it still was a bad look.
It was a bad look. And look, it's a team that is much like the 49ers in many regards. They're just too hurt to really be. And in many regards, I think they'd have lost in the next round because it's very hard to move forwards when you're missing. A top linebacker in Adrian Cooper, an absolute stud edge rusher in Parsons, Devonta Wyatt, Evan Williams was on a snap count, Tucker Kraft's out for the season. They've had injuries at receiver. All of the Elton Jenkins is out, Zach Tom is out. It's hard to push through in January when you're missing players of that caliber. You're probably missing 6 or 7 of your top 10 players. Same with the 49ers, and the coaching job with Shanahan and Salah and Cade Kubiak has been unbelievable because, to lose George Kittle on top of all the other injuries, Boza, Warner, etc., is just remarkable. But the Bears play well. The Bears are dangerous. And Caleb Williams might the most kind of, oh my God, what are you doing, to oh my God, that's unbelievable kind of player. 52% completion percentage, but some of the throws are just ridiculous. And in the tight end, the kid from Michigan, they've got an absolute stone cold. Love him. Because not only does he run brilliant routes, not only is he a great catcher, not only can he go up and get the ball, he's a dominant blocker as well. He is going to be super, super good for such a long time. I mean, what did he end up with, like 8 catches for 142 or something, and the touchdown, the extra point, and he's a stud. And they've got the look at that offensive line. They rebuilt that offensive line. They went out and got Joe Tooney. They got Drew Dorman. They got the kid they got the right guard. Darnell Wright's turned into an all-pro right tackle.
Chris spent a month on this podcast talking about Darnell Wright.
Yeah, and they got it right at left tackle. They could win it all. I mean, they're good enough to win it all. If the quarterback, continues to develop, they've got power players at every position.
They just can't keep doing this spotting the other team 3 scores thing.
No, they can't.
Well, but also, I mean, and this is one of the lessons to take away. Why do you think we talk about like dynamic quarterbacks? Is because when you get into those end of game situations where the defense is tired a little bit, and you have a dynamic quarterback back there, it's tough to stop. It's tough to stop in those late game situations. It can be, and so that's why that's one of and where are games won nowadays? They're won at the end of the game. This is why you do want those kind of for lack of a better word, alien type quarterbacks, and they will always get the following and the interest from the NFL, because in those situations, what would you rather have when you've got 4 downs and you don't need to complete, for a 4-down football, you don't need to complete 3 of them, right? You just need to complete 1 of them. and if you got a guy that can run around there and do things with his legs and then a big arm, it's a very powerful weapon in those situations.
Yeah, and finally, the curtain jerker for the entire weekend: Carolina, 8-9 Carolina at home against, in my estimation, the best team in football, the Rams. Although they failed to prove it down the stretch because they had the number 1 seed right there in front of them, and they blew, what was it, a 22-point lead against the Seahawks toward the end of the year. So, I guess they're paying for it now, having to go on the road. And they'll be going to Chicago next week. But what a game this was, Simon. Carolina back and forth. Stafford, throw after throw. Like, he had some throws in that game. And he was facing J.C. Horn and Mike Jackson, who's just come out of nowhere from the U.
Yeah, Jackson played well. Look, I think the Rams are the best team in the league currently, and I think they would be my favorite to win the Super Bowl. But you go back to week 15 or whatever it was, Carolina played exactly the same game against the Rams and, only just managed to, or in fact, the Panthers actually won that game, and the Rams only just managed to get away with the victory at the weekend because it did look for all the world in that fourth quarter like Carolina were going to win. And I think it's really interesting the job that Dave Canales has done. I think the defense is really good. And J.C. Horn went out of the game towards the back end with the injury and stuff. And that's the one troubling thing with him is you can't quite keep him healthy. But look, if you're Dave Canales, if you're a Carolina fan, that run game is decent, but it's not explosive necessarily. I know Rico Dowdle earlier on in the season had some explosives, but generally he's not like a massive creator. He's a run over people. He's a kind of David Montgomery. And I think they're in desperate need of a Jahmyr Gibbs or a Devon Achane to really help Bryce Young. I thought Young played really well. The offensive line held up, and they just need help at receiver. Ted McMillan's great. Jalen Coker looks like he's coming on, but unfortunately Xavier Legette just looks like a complete bust at this stage. And I just think if they had a couple more targets for Bryce. But yeah, that was a good game. And Stafford is just an absolute. He's just the Rams. I mean, it's interesting. I mean, Peter Schrager just tweeted a picture of Sean McVay saying 7 years ago today, McVay was given the head coaching gig of the Rams after literally scoring 7 points and getting knocked out on the final week of the regular season, not making the playoffs, only scoring 7 points. And now look at him, he's the best or kind of co-best head coach in the league. So they're just such a fundamentally well-coached team, and all the pieces mesh together. Puka Nacua is just ridiculous. Kyron Williams as a pass protector is insane. I mean, the offensive line isn't like the greatest, but they all do their jobs really well. That's Avila or Alaric Jackson or whoever. Obviously, they're missing Rob Havenstein and stuff. But, I mean, and like, how many drops did Devontae Adams have down the stretch? It was like, when have you ever seen those sorts of things happen? But
yeah. And by the way, there was a stat in that game that just stabbed me right in the heart. They said that Dave Canales was the only coach this season, or the Panthers were the only team that had a streak longer than 4 on 4th and 1. They made it 7 times in a row. Uh, guess who was fourth? Not Miami.
Not Miami.
Chris, this game.
Yeah, that one. I actually, it was kind of interesting to watch Stafford struggle a little bit in the early goings. I felt like, but of course, at the end, he just showed. It was a lot like the Josh Allen Superman, kind of cape moments. And that's one of the reasons that it was one of the best games of the weekend and one of the best weekends of playoff probably history. And so I think that that team is obviously really good, but going into this game, this was a perfect recipe to rub the NFL's nose in their unwillingness to do the reseeding rules. Because Carolina is a completely different team at home. Completely different. On the road, they're nothing. On the road.
And to be clear, the NFL is the only major American sport that does not reseed the playoffs.
Yeah. So on the road, the Carolina Panthers are trash. They won 3 games and they and by a total of I think like 13 points, and low scoring games, and just very ugly games at that. And at home, you kind of flip a coin, and they might be not good at home, but they also might be phenomenal at home, and that, or particularly the offense. And this was one of those days where the offense was clicking. They were finding a lot of room in the passing game to get that ball out to guys on the run and to make big plays. And Bryce Young had a phenomenal game. And I don't know, for my money, I'm still not sure about Bryce Young, but they really put it on. And I think you have a great point, Simon, with the running game. For all that, we would look at it and say that running game seems okay. They don't have a lot of explosiveness there. And I know that he's not Jahmyr Gibbs, but you kind of wonder about Jeremiah Love. But you wonder about a really, really talented running back going in there. And so, we'll see how that pans out going forward. But again, that was a hell of a way to kick off playoff weekend.
Yeah, sometime later on this week, or who knows, maybe early next week, or probably later on this week, we'll talk about all the head coaching candidates. There's 1,000 of them. I don't think that the Titans have reached out to any of us yet, but if they haven't, then that says something about us, because their interview list, it's not 16, Simon. You said 16 on our Discord, but it's 14. Like they're literally interviewing anybody who's alive and has ever coached a football game before in their life. Last thing for this show, one more playoff game left. The Steelers are putting on the line their streak of 24 consecutive. This is one of the greatest streaks in American sport. 24 consecutive wins at home on Monday Night Football. And they're putting it on the line against the team that if you told me this was a neutral field, I would start taking out mortgages on my house to put it on the Texans in this game, because my thinking would be, how the hell is Aaron Rodgers going to put up with that defense? How is he going to get past that defense? So we'll talk about that right now. Simon, your thoughts on this game? The only thing that gives me apprehension is that streak that the Steelers have going. Steelers at home against the Texans. Who do you have tonight?
I think the Texans win comfortably. Defense too good. CJ Stroud too good. Weapons too good. It's a comfortable Houston win for me.
So streak over.
Streak. Fuck the streak.
Chris, fuck the streak.
I'm gonna take the streak. I'm gonna take.
Oh
the
wow!
streak,
So it makes it the 25.
And I'm gonna take the streak, and I'm gonna have a moment, maybe a last moment for old boy at quarterback for the Steelers, and I'll take them.
Yeah, no, I can't make a case. Like if it was on a neutral field, if you do the neutral field test, if you put them on a neutral field, can you make a case for the Steelers? No. If my only reason for picking the Steelers would be some mythical streak, well, it's not really mythical. It's actually happened, right? So if my only reason is a building that they're going to be playing in, I don't think it's a reason enough. That Texans defense is the best in football, followed closely by Seattle. Texans by a touchdown. Aaron Rodgers will make it interesting.
The Athletic are reporting that the Giants met John Harbaugh for lunch yesterday and had an informal meeting at his house, and that both sides are reporting that Harbaugh remains extremely interested in the Giants' job.
I think he's extremely interested in several of the jobs, though.
Yeah, he's playing flirty McFlirtface, isn't he? But
yeah, well, there's a little bit of we talked about this on the Discord. The desperation a little bit. The Giants have been, Joe Shane has been, calling them, every day basically, and having lots of conversations. I think that the Giants are a serious threat there because good organization matters. The one thing that I think is kind of being overrated a little bit is the quarterback thing, because, for us and us fans, I think it's all about the quarterback, and that's understandable. But if you're John Harbaugh, I don't know that it's all about the quarterback that's in place, because the only thing that's worse than not having a quarterback is having the wrong quarterback. So, the John Harbaugh, you're going to look at these quarterbacks across the landscape, these teams, and you're going to try to evaluate them over a weekend, where normally if you're picking a quarterback, John Harbaugh, you've been following these guys for months and evaluating and analyzing them for months and months. And he's got to evaluate, a Jackson Dart, a Cam Ward, et cetera, over a weekend, and then decide his future. And if you're John Harbaugh, quarterback hasn't been an issue for you. I mean, he was in Philadelphia for the longest time. They took right away in Philadelphia. They took Donovan McNabb, went to 4 straight conference championships, game in a Super Bowl. And then he gets to the Baltimore Ravens, and the first thing they do is they draft Joe Flacco. Where did they do it? Number 18 overall, just kind of casual. They take Joe Flacco, and then they go to the Super Bowl. And then what happens, to 2018, they take Lamar Jackson. Where did they take him? Number 32 overall, no big deal. And then they go straight from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson. This guy has been blessed, at the quarterback. We're tearing our hair out because we have 27 whatever quarterbacks since Dan Marino, and we're all of us are trigger shy about the quarterbacks, and trying to take a quarterback. And John Harbaugh has to be thinking, I get to be part of picking the next quarterback. Cool. That's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'll get you a quarterback.
So yeah, I'll get you a quarterback. You're picking 11 overall. That's better than I've done the last 2 times.
I could picture Stephen Ross saying, "Man, John, the issue here is we just can't get the quarterback." And John's like, how?
I'm telling you, it's about organization. It's about general manager. It's about, things like that. And he's going to stack the pros and the cons, and the Miami cons are going to be pretty significant with respect to the salary cap issues and, moving on from Tua and stuff like that. There's a significant cons list with Miami for them to get over with him. But I don't know that quarterback is what everybody says it is, because this guy is not a fan sitting on the couch driving himself crazy about quarterbacks and only talking about quarterbacks. I think it's going to be about whether he's convinced Joe Shane is the guy to partner with him. Yeah. And if he is, then he'll go there.
I think the biggest danger is Atlanta. And actually, I don't think Miami are close to winning the Harbaugh thing. I don't think Harbaugh will come to Miami. I think the Falcons are a big threat, actually. I think so. But remember what I said, the worst thing than having no quarterback is having the wrong one. Sure.
Michael Penix has had 2 ACLs in one knee, an ACL in the other knee, another multiple AC joint, and shoulder injuries. The man is walking wounded. He has a bigger list, a more serious list. If it weren't for concussions and that being such a hot button, it would be as significant as to it right now.
Absolutely. But what is the thing that Atlanta has that the Giants don't have, that Miami don't have in their favor? And that's the easiest path to a division title. Yeah, the NFC South was just won by an 8-9 team.
That's fair. It's a fair point. But they also have good. They have good ownership, and they have good structure.
Yeah, by the way, defense. And for all the people,
re-sign Kyle Pitts, they've got Drake London. If they can find the quarterback, or if that's a big question, but that is a simple path to a division title, and that's got to be
blank slate with the general manager. Matt Ryan just got hired on as president, but they have blank slate at the general manager. It is a very attractive, if quarterback isn't that big of a thing, then this is the biggest rival for Miami, in my opinion, is the Atlanta Falcons.
I
If
agree.
quarterback is a thing, then you're looking at Cam Ward or Jackson Dart, but I kind of tend to doubt that. And if quarterback's really a thing, then he should just go take the Las Vegas Raiders job because he's talking to them and they've got number 1 overall and they're about to pick, perfect boy Fernando Mendoza. So
yeah, by the way, if John Harbaugh is actually listening to this podcast, which I highly doubt, but let's just say by the 1 in a billion chance that he is listening to this podcast, my argument against Jackson Dart, the guy tried to kill Nakobe Dean and Robert Spillane in one season.
He's best.
And he didn't try to kill
Cam Stadabo.
And he didn't try to kill them with like a baseball bat or a gun or anything like that. He tried to run them over and spear them with his head.
He tried to kill them with his head.
That's your quarterback, John. I don't think you want that.
I would have serious issues with that. The guy has that mentality. I would be afraid. Again, it's what's worse than not having a quarterback is having the wrong one.
And he had 2 concussion stints. We're here.
Exactly.
We're here scared to death about Tua's next hit. And this guy had 2 concussion stints in his rookie season. That can't end well. But I absolutely agree. Atlanta is the danger. And a significant one, I think, in my opinion. Because the Tennessee one, and I think we could go off the air with this. The Tennessee one, the only thing I look at against Tennessee, it's a good situation. You get to clean the slate. You get to run the show. You got Cam Ward. Oh, my God, they need an entire roster. Like, what do you got? You got Jeffrey Simmons and you got Cam Ward.
Well, before we get off, though, I mean, surely we need to quickly. I mean, I know there's a game starting in 6 minutes, but we need to just have a quick word about the coaches, right? I mean, by the time we reconvene, we might have a head coach in play. We've got 7 interviewees. Who's the Kelvin Shepherd?
I don't know that it's going to be fast, though. To be fair,
no, I don't. But 7 days is a long time. But
sure.
First timer intrigued by Clint Kubiak.
Yeah, I think Kubiak and Salah are the 2 guys that might be just under the radar here. I like Stefanski too. Hafley obviously will get but I think Clint Kubiak in that sort of swing for the hedges. I think Troy Aikman will like Clint Kubiak. He knows Gary obviously, and Kubiak's resume is pretty good. What he's done with the Seahawks is great. What he's done with Darnold is great. If you look at Jackson Smith and Jigba, all the explosive plays down the field they've had this season, and Stefanski, 2-time coach of the year. I think Salah, as Chris talked about 20 minutes ago, is really interesting, especially if he can get a good offensive coordinator, Brian Daboll, somebody of that ilk, really good that can just look after that situation. Clint Kubiak to me is the guy that's kind of sniffing under the radar.
Yeah, and another first timer, Jesse Minter. Like if Jesse Minter came in and brought in, I don't know, and you mentioned it on Discord, Todd Monken, that's pretty sexy.
Yeah, Todd Monken, yeah. I mean, I suspect Monken would go with Harbaugh. I mean, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, it's hard to say. But from the start it had been messaging, before we even had a head coach opening, way before. It had been, pretty much right when Aikman joined the fray. If that gives you any clues. Jeff Hafley's name was given to me immediately and insisted upon me over and over again. And that's the DC of defensive coordinator of your team, the Green Bay Packers. And
although Micah Parsons disagrees with you, he says he's going nowhere.
Yeah, he does. He says he's going nowhere for whatever reason. But I can't tell you. I have no idea. I don't know why Jeff Hafley. I don't know why, I can't sit here and, espouse all the virtues of a Jeff Hafley. But that's the name that I keep hearing. And so I think that looms. I also think, and his head coach experience at Boston College, I guess, is viewed favorably because he wouldn't be a first-time head coach. He's been, head coach before. I just know that we're in the part of the cycle where Steve Ross is going to look favorably upon head coach experience. We are not in the part of the cycle where he wants the sexy young never head coach guy And so I think that actually a guy like Clint Kubiak and even Chris Shula have, kind of some strikes against them that way. But I think that Jeff Hafley walks in with good support in that building, and then John Harbaugh looms. And then I fully agree with you, Simon, about Robert Saleh being kind of a dark horse. Be careful about that, because Steve Ross has a thing about those New York guys. I swear to God, he's based in New York. He's headquartered in New York, and for some reason, he almost knows more about the New York guys than he does the Miami guys, frankly. So I think that's something to keep an eye on.
All right. That's it. There's no more. We're going to do another show probably later on this week. God knows we have enough sponsors that I gotta get them as much exposure as possible. So we'll probably be with you later on this week, and we'll talk head coaching candidates and college football national championship game. But till then.
Cheers, guys.